Hello everybody, this is Drmcbrick and I am here with my Central Perk Friends MOC, and I showed you the first story. I showed you the building and how I did it and expanded it and everything and put it right next to the sanctum, and you can see it fits into Figsdale very nicely. You see how it comes around there like that. Anyway, what I did not show you is the second floor, because if you remember, I was trying to figure out what to put in it. Well, guess what? I found something to put in it. Let's take a look. So the Central Perk building has two stories on it, and I took it off here, as you can see, it's attached to the sanctum, which has the old style architecture, which is attached to the Ghostbusters headquarters there. So probably turn of the 20th century, I would say, type of buildings. And so what am I going to put in there? Boy, I'll tell you, I have thought about it, and I've had tons and tons of comments. Thank you so much about that. I've been, people have said, hey, put Monica's apartment, put Chandler's apartment, put all the different characters' apartments and things. And I don't want to do apartments just because I have a lot of apartment stock here in Figsdale. But and one person said, and I thought it was a great idea, they said, hey, do an agency type of thing with your sig figs, maybe a sig fig headquarters. I thought about a laundromat. I thought about, but then I thought upstairs, carrying your clothes all the way upstairs to the laundromat, that's almost torture, isn't it? But and then I thought about doing a library or a bookstore, and then I got the announcement that the modular that's going to go way over there is actually a bookstore, so I'm not doing that. So anyway, I got to thinking, you know what? The town that I grew up in was full of these old style of buildings. And now it wasn't a big town; it was probably about 60,000 people. So in United States size, that's just a town, not a it's a city, not a big city or whatever. But anyway, it had a steel mill in it. My dad worked at the steel mill all his life, and there were just thousands and thousands of people that worked there, and the majority of them were immigrants to the United States from Europe and Eastern Europe. So in town, we had all of these old buildings, and each one of these old buildings was a club representing the ethnicity of a particular group. So we had the Italian American Club, the Croatian American Club, the Polish American Club, and we just had them kind of going down a row and stuff like that. And in many of those clubs were bowling alleys. That's right. There were some bowling alleys that were large, and the huge bowloramas that we had in town that were 30 and 40 lanes. However, there were bowling alleys in these small buildings here. And that's what I thought I would do for this, because I remember my grandmother taking me, and also my grandfather on my mom's side, my grandmother on my dad's side, and my grandfather on my mom's side. We all bowled. They would take us to these buildings, and we would go upstairs or down in basements, and there would be one alley or two alleys tops, and that would be it. And there'd be kind of the guy over here, the bowling pro, so to speak. He would be there, and you would just bowl, and that's what people did. And that's downstairs there'd be a bar, and people would have fun and all kinds of things, just similar to Central Perk, right? Have their drinks and donuts and food and all that kind of stuff. But then they would come up or down, one of the two, and they'd bowl on the one or two old craggly lanes that were there with the old machines and stuff. So I am going to put a bowling alley on top of Central Perk. Now, I have mentioned that I am going to do a big Flintstones bowlorama, which is going to be somewhere in Figsdale, but I designed it on Studio, and to be honest with you, it's going to cost a boatload of money to produce, because it's a really nice mid-century style bowling alley. So I probably won't be doing that for a long time. And so until then, I have this bowling alley here, and there's never too many bowling alleys in a town, if you ask me. So this is what we're going to do. So we're going to put two lanes here. Now I really tried to get the lanes to go this way to maximize the space, but I couldn't because they were too stubby. I think this is a good size for the lanes. Going to put the gutters and then the machine in the middle and on the sides and things like that with a small little machine here. There'll only be a couple of pins, so it won't be be a full 10-pin type of thing. But this is Lego. It's not realistic in a lot of ways. So anyway, you do take liberties when you're building. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm working here. I have all kinds of stuff out, and I'm working like crazy. And so I came up with these style of lanes. Now, remember in the old style, back when I was a kid, I remembered going upstairs, up top on one of these clubs. I forget what club it was, but anyway, and they had two little old ramshackle lanes up there. Just really anything people could use for bowling. And you could tell that they had replaced some boards and stuff like that. So I wanted to make this in that spirit. And so I came up with the lanes here. And of course, we have the gutters, which are down one. So I had to put everything up two tiles, or up on a plate and a tile. But if I tile all this in, this will only be up one little tile, which if you've ever been to a bowling alley, that's the way it is. You have to step up onto the lanes. Just a little tiny step, maybe an inch or two. So anyway, so then that way that gives the impression, the depth, that there are gutters where the ball, if you really suck, you can go, the ball will go down there and go into the gutter. Now, the other thing that I remember from back when I was a kid in going to these lanes was the bright colors, and they were the teal and the pink, and sometimes orange, sometimes you know, kind of a magenta type of thing, but they were the real standout kind of 40s, 50s, and 60s colors. So I'm using these teal pieces right here. Now, these are actually pieces off of the ramp from the Bart Simpson ramp, from the Simpsons house, which, by the way, you know, we tore it apart, and we have gotten so many parts out of that we can use. And there's another piece that we could use right there. So this gives a little curvature to it. It makes it feel like there is a gutter down here. So if the ball rolls down there, it will go somewhere. Now, you see I only have room for 3 pins each. But back here, I need to have some depth, or something that shows that there's kind of an abyss back here, that once the pins fall down, they go somewhere. Now, obviously, this isn't real because there's a wall right there. Normally, there would be a machine back there, but there isn't, or a person back in the day. And my dad actually used to do that when he was in high school. He used to set pins. So my dad would actually be sitting behind the wall here, or behind the machine, and there wasn't a machine actually, but behind the bowling alley. And when they knocked down the pins, my dad would set the pins back up by hand, and that's how he made money when he was a kid. So anyway, so what I'm going to do, I think what I'm going to do is add these curved black tiles in here and see how that looks, and see if that actually makes it look decent. So anyway, I'll keep building and be back. So I've decided to go with this for the back wall of the bowling alley, of each lane. And I think this will give it some texture. And so as you look at it, it's going to give it a lot of texture as the light shines on it. Now, I know you won't be able to see down in there so much, but when I take pictures and stuff, it should show up, and I know it's in there, and I like those little details. So anyway, I have to find a whole bunch more of those types of bricks, but I'll tell you what, sifting through a whole bunch of black pieces in a bin like this, it's just satisfying. It's like going through the charred wreckage of Moldor and trying to find, anyway, you know what I mean. It's just really cool. All right, back to building. Now, here's a tip when tiling. You notice there's all kinds of little spaces to get back behind the tile and everything. So what I do is I go ahead and map it out, put all my stuff up, as you see, my counters and my chairs and everything. And then I put jumpers in, or studs that I can take off very easily. And I take off all the furniture, and then I tile around it. And that way it's a lot easier than trying to squeeze your fingers back behind all the furniture. Okay, here we are with the final product. So on the front, obviously, we have this sign right here, the studs. And what I'm going to put on here are some sort of lanes. I don't know if it'll be Figsdale lanes, if it'll be whatever the name is, there'll be lanes there. Right here's the door, and you come up the stairs. There will be stairs here on the Central Perk building. You come up the stairs, and voila, you have the bowling alley. Now, let's take a look at some of the features of this bowling alley. Well, first of all, as I mentioned before, when I was a kid, and I used to go to these little buildings, all of these different clubs in the town that I'm from, and upstairs or downstairs, they'd have these old craggly lanes, and all the boards and everything were replaced, and it was basically just, kind of putting them together. And then they bought these old bowling machines, and the old bowling machines were really bright colors. They were yellow and pink and turquoise, and so I remember them like this. They had that AMF logo up here that kind of was a V. So I tried to simulate that with these particular printed tiles from one of the Supergirl sets, I believe. And of course, I only had room for 3 pins each, so I kind of made a set up there and put the studs down so that there would be one that has a full set, so it gives you the idea that there's a full set of pins, and then one where the person is going to have to bowl a spare there. Now, for the gutters, I recessed them, as I mentioned before. There was always a little machine, little fan that you could dry your hands off and get the moisture off your hands before you got ready to throw the ball. There's a bowling ball that's come up through the bowling ball return in the center, and of course on top here I've made this so this comes up. So if you actually want to play bowling with it, you can. And as a matter of fact, Piper was playing just when I got done with this mock, and she came down here and she grabbed the ball, and I took the pins off the studs and set them up, and she just flicked the ball, and we kind of played bowling there for a couple minutes. It was kind of cool, and she got a strike, so she's very good, evidently, better than her dad. So this is kind of what I've come up with. Basically the machine, if you remember anyone from those old days, the machines from the 30s and the 40s, those pin setting machines were absolutely monstrosities of steel. And that's kind of what this represents. But they were also cool, Art Deco, very mid-century, depending on when the machine was made, that sort of thing. If you look at it through the window, you can see that, there's not much view in the window, but at least you can see it, and it's nice and neat and everything like that. Let's take a look down into the actual pins, and I can't really get a light down in there, but I did use those bricks, those profile bricks there, and it looks really nice back in there. Actually, when I get my head way down in there, I don't know if you can see it or not. Let me try to zoom here. No, you can't see it. It just gives the impression of darkness at the moment. But trust me, when you look at it in real life, it actually looks really cool back there because there is some texture. So we have the basic shape of the alley. Now, because the two alleys took up the whole floor in this particular mock, we only had a little bit, and I apologize, this is on the bottom here, it's got all the beams and stuff to hold up this monstrosity of a floor here and all this weight. But anyway, so I tiled everything in on this side. Those aren't gutters, but those are just kind of tiles, because if any of you have bowled before, if the machines get stuck, there's a guy who, he'll come out here and the worker will have to kind of inch his way back behind the machines and everything and try to reset it manually and all that sort of thing. So that's what that's for. As we turn it around, we look and we have the chairs and the scoring table with the lights. Now, this is interesting, and the reason I did this, well, there's the ball return there, but the reason I did this was because if any of you remember the old bowling machines, they weren't electronic at all. Nowadays, you just go and you throw the ball and everything is electronic. There's no tables, there's no scorekeeping or anything. But back in the old days, you had to keep score, and you actually had to keep score on these types of tables. And there was usually one per lane, but since this is only a 2-lane alley, this is the basic machine. And they gave you this long sheet of paper, and usually the sheet of paper was, at least in my day, was pink or turquoise or yellow or orange. It was kind of a bright, gaudy color. And so I put this horizontal looking a sheet of paper down here because you actually had to score all of the strikes, the spares, and all of the pins that went down. There were always lights, really bright lights that you would turn on and that would illuminate this table and everything like that. The other thing about the table back in the day was they always had a chair, and the chair swiveled, and it never really swiveled all the way, which This chair, if you notice, only swivels halfway. So you can get it on this side, you can get on this side. But it never swiveled the whole way, so that was interesting. Now, because we don't have room for benches and stuff, I just put one bench here. And this bench, of course, can be moved and positioned however you like it. I like the way the alleys have come up, and so you literally step up onto the alley just as you would in a bowling lane in real life. I put a couple studs there. There's a stud for somebody to stand if they want to get their ball. There's studs here for someone to stand if they want to bowl on the lanes, that sort of thing. Now, any lane or any bowling alley, even small as this one is, has to have a place for bowling shoes. And so we have the shelves here for the various bowling shoes. And given a lane of this size, you'd only have a couple of sizes that your main customers would always come for. There's some coffee, and there's a little spot there where you can take some change in his change box. There's a coffee cup there, probably from Central Perk, right down below. And then, of course, a pad of paper and things like that. There is the extra ball rack, and right now it looks like the balls are being used, but this is only a two lane alley, so there's only really one ball right there. But anyway, so there's a ball right there to be used. Oh, and I'm missing a stud. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm missing a tile. Oh, I better get on that. See, no matter how hard you try, you always miss something. And then back here, of course, is the door, and there's a mat with various studs and things like that, so you can pose your figs as well. So that is my bowling alley in the second story of the Central Perk MOC building. I think it's going to look really cool. I really appreciate all of the comments and the suggestions I got for this second story. I wish I could have done all of them. I really liked the agency idea. I liked the apartments. The laundromat was a great idea. Just a whole bunch of different things. Somebody mentioned a public library. Somebody also mentioned dividing it up into small little craft stores. Thank you so much for all of your suggestions. I think the bowling alley fits. It goes really well here. Let me know what you think in the comments. If for some reason YouTube has turned off my comments, please go to drmcbrick.com and comment there, or go to my Instagram at drmcbrick, Facebook, Dr. McBrick on Facebook, and check me out there as well. I'm working on those pages and trying to get all of those different websites and things put up and make them much more user friendly and a lot more content and stuff like that. So let me know what you think about this. Again, I try to build MOCs that mean something to me, and try to build MOCs that I can remember from back in the day and stuff like that. In some ways, it's a way to go through my childhood, right? But I think that's what a lot of AFOLs are in it for, to kind of relive some of that. And so I'm reliving the great times I had with my grandparents, my mom and my dad, and everybody, when we would go to these little buildings in the town that I was from, and we would go to these little bowling alleys, get our shoes, sit down at this crazy little mid-century looking curved bench with those big sheets of pink paper, and we would bowl and just laugh and have a great time. This is Dr. McBrick. I gotta go bowling. Signing out.